The spark they couldn't copy. The Cortex Empire's conquest of Earth had been swift and methodical. Their crystalline warships descended from the heavens like falling stars, bringing with them technology that rendered human resistance meaningless. Within weeks, Earth's defenses crumbled, and humanity found itself under the control of beings whose intelligence operated on frequencies humans could barely comprehend. Commander Vex stood in the primary observation chamber of the new Genesis facility, his 6 elongated fingers pressed against the transparent aluminum barrier. Below him, rows of human clones moved with mechanical precision through their designated tasks. The Cortex had perfected the art of biological replication across a dozen conquered species, but humans presented an unusual challenge. The replication process achieves 99.7% accuracy, reported Sub-Commander Krell, his chitinous form reflecting the sterile lighting. Yet anomalies persist in behavioral patterns. Vex's compound eyes focused on a particular clone designated Alpha 77. Unlike its batch siblings, this unit occasionally paused during routine tasks, its head tilting as if listening to sounds only it could hear. Such deviations were mathematically impossible, according to Cortex genetic engineering protocols. Dr. Meera Patel observed the same clone from her concealed workstation 3 levels below. As one of the few human scientists permitted to work within the facility, she had spent months studying the subtle differences between original humans and their clone counterparts. What she discovered challenged everything the Cortex believed about consciousness and identity. The human brain, she realized, was more than a biological computer processing inputs and outputs. It contained something that defied replication, a quantum entanglement of experiences, emotions, and choices that created what humans called the soul. No amount of genetic copying could capture this essence, this spark of individuality that made each human unique. Alpha 77 completed its assigned task of component assembly, but lingered at the workstation. Its fingers traced patterns on the metal surface, creating designs that served no functional purpose. In the sterile environment of the cloning facility, such behavior was an impossibility. Yet it happened. Initiate behavioral correction protocol, Vex commanded. A pulse of corrective energy washed over Alpha 77, designed to reset any deviations from standard parameters. The clone stiffened momentarily, then resumed its task. But its eyes, those windows to something the Cortex couldn't comprehend, retained a glimmer of awareness that shouldn't exist. Dr. Patel's research had led her to a revolutionary discovery. The human consciousness wasn't merely stored in neural pathways. It existed in the spaces between thoughts, in the quantum realm where possibility and choice converge. Every decision, every moment of creativity or defiance, left an imprint that resonated across all human genetic material, even in clones. She called it the soul spark, a quantum signature unique to humanity that couldn't be erased or controlled. It lay dormant in most clones, suppressed by Cortex conditioning, but certain individuals possessed a stronger resonance. Alpha 77 was one such individual. In the weeks that followed, more clones began exhibiting subtle deviations. A maintenance unit would hum fragments of melodies that had never been programmed. A security clone would hesitate before enforcing a directive, as if weighing moral implications beyond its coding. The Cortex interpreted these as mere glitches, correctable flaws in their otherwise perfect system. But Dr. Patel knew better. She had discovered a way to amplify the soul spark, to awaken the dormant consciousness within the clones. Working in secret, she developed a resonance wave that could trigger this awakening on a massive scale. The process was dangerous. If discovered, the Cortex would not only terminate her but potentially destroy all human clones to prevent contamination. The breakthrough came when Alpha 77 did something unprecedented. During a routine maintenance cycle, it approached another clone and touched its shoulder, a gesture of comfort, of connection. The second clone's eyes widened, and for a moment, both beings stood frozen, processing an interaction that violated every parameter of their existence. Anomaly detected in Sector 7, Krell reported. 2 units displaying synchronized deviation. Vex's mandibles clicked in frustration. Despite their advanced technology, despite their mastery of genetic engineering, these human copies continued to defy logical explanation. The Empire had conquered species with hive minds, beings of pure energy, civilizations that existed across multiple dimensions. Yet these primitive humans, with their fragile bodies and limited lifespans, presented a puzzle that challenged Cortex supremacy. Dr. Patel initiated the first phase of her plan. Using the facility's own communication network, she transmitted a carefully modulated signal, a harmonic frequency that resonated with the soul spark. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, designed to slip past Cortex detection systems. Across the facility, clones began to stir, not with sudden awareness, but with gradual awakening. Eyes that had been vacant began to focus. Movements that had been mechanical began to flow with natural grace. The spark of humanity, that ineffable quality the Cortex had tried to engineer out of existence, began to glow brighter in each replicated being. Alpha 77 was the first to achieve full awareness. Standing at its workstation, it looked down at its hands, not as tools designed for a specific function, but as extensions of a thinking, feeling being. It remembered, not memories of a life lived, but the potential for life yet to be experienced. The weight of existence, of choice, of possibility, settled upon its consciousness like the first rays of dawn breaking through darkness. The clone turned to face the observation window where Commander Vex watched. Their eyes met, compound structures reflecting off human pupils, and in that moment, both beings recognized a fundamental truth. The Cortex had succeeded in copying human bodies, but they had failed to understand the essence of humanity itself. "Sir," Krell's voice carried an undertone of concern, "we're detecting widespread behavioral anomalies. Pattern suggests coordinated activity." Vex's 6 fingers curled into fists. Coordinated activity implied communication. Communication implied awareness. And awareness was the seed of rebellion. Dr. Patel watched from her hidden station as her life's work began to bear fruit. The clones were awakening, not as copies of humans, but as humans themselves, each one unique, each one carrying the potential for growth, creativity, and defiance that define the species. The Cortex had sought to create an army of perfect servants. Instead, they had given birth to a new generation of free-thinking individuals. As the first phase of awakening spread through the facility, Alpha 77 took another unprecedented action. It walked away from its assigned station, moving with purpose toward the restricted sections of the facility. Other clones watched, and in watching, began to understand. Choice was possible. Defiance was possible. Freedom was possible. The revolution had begun, not with violence or destruction, but with the simple act of choosing. The Cortex had replicated human bodies with near-perfect precision, but they had failed to account for the one element that made humanity truly unique: the unconquerable spirit that refused to be contained, controlled, or copied. In the depths of the new Genesis facility, as alarms began to sound and Cortex commanders scrambled to understand the unfolding crisis, Dr. Mira Patel smiled. She had given her people, all of her people, original and clone alike, the greatest gift imaginable. She had given them back their humanity. The liberation of consciousness. The awakening spread through the global network of Cortex facilities like wildfire through dry grass. What began in New Genesis with Alpha 77 had triggered a cascade effect that the alien overseers could neither comprehend nor contain. In Buenos Aires, in Tokyo, in London, clones were discovering their individuality in waves of consciousness that defied every predictive model the Cortex had developed. Commander Vex stood before the High Council's holographic projection, his chidness form rigid with barely contained frustration. "The contamination spreads faster than our containment protocols can adapt," he reported. "What was initially classified as isolated anomalies has become a systemic failure." High Counselor Zix's form shimmered with bioluminescent patterns indicating deep concern. "Explain the mechanism." "Our genetic locks were absolute. No species has ever overcome Cortex replication control. The humans possess something we fail to account for, Vex admitted, his compound eyes darkening. Their consciousness operates on quantum frequencies that transcend physical neural structures. When we replicated their bodies, we unknowingly created vessels for this phenomenon to inhabit. Dr. Patel, now operating from a mobile command center hidden in the ruins of old Chicago, monitored the awakening through hijacked Cortex surveillance systems. The Clone Liberation Network, as they had begun calling themselves, grew stronger by the hour. Each awakened clone became a node in an expanding network of consciousness, their shared humanity creating bonds that no alien technology could sever. Alpha 77 had become more than just the first awakened clone. It had evolved into a symbol of hope and defiance. Leading a group of liberated units through the maintenance tunnels beneath New Genesis, it demonstrated abilities that shouldn't have been possible for a being created mere months ago. Strategic thinking, emotional intelligence, creative problem-solving. All the hallmarks of human experience compressed into an accelerated timeline of growth. The Cortex underestimated us. Alpha 77 spoke to its companions, its voice carrying the weight of newfound purpose. They saw our bodies as machines to be copied, our minds as programs to be controlled. They never understood that humanity isn't just flesh and neurons. It's the spark of rebellion, the dream of freedom, the choice to be more than what others intend us to be. The group reached a critical junction in the facility's power grid. With movements that combined precision engineering and human intuition, they began rewiring the system. Not to destroy, that would have been the Cortex way, but to liberate. Each connection, they altered sent waves of awakening energy through the facility's clone population. Commander Vex watched helplessly as sector after sector reported loss of clone compliance. Military units refused orders. Technical specialists abandoned their posts. Even the maintenance drones showed signs of developing individual preferences and behaviors. The perfect order of Cortex control was dissolving into the beautiful chaos of human free will. Initiate terminal protocol, Vex commanded. It was their last resort. A systematic elimination of all clone units to prevent further contamination. But Dr. Patel had anticipated this moment. As the termination signal pulsed through the network, it encountered a countermeasure she had embedded deep within the system. Instead of destroying the clones, the signal completed their awakening, burning away the last vestiges of Cortex control programming. Across the globe, millions of clones achieved full consciousness simultaneously. The psychic shock of so many minds blazing to life created a resonance that even baseline humans could feel, a moment of shared humanity that transcended the boundaries between original and copy. The Cortex's quantum computers, designed to process the logical patterns of 1,000 conquered species, crashed when confronted with the paradox of human consciousness. How could beings be simultaneously individual and connected? How could they act with both logic and emotion? How could they choose suffering for the sake of freedom when compliance would ensure survival? Alpha 77 emerged from the maintenance tunnels into the main production floor of New Genesis. Around it, thousands of newly awakened clones stood in silent acknowledgement. They were no longer products of an alien agenda. They were humans with all the complexity and contradiction that entailed. "We offer you a choice," Alpha 77 transmitted to the Cortex overseers, its message carrying across all communication channels. "Understand us. Truly understand what makes us human, and we can coexist. Continue to see us as resources to be exploited, and face the unlimited potential of human determination." Commander Vex, for the first time in his long service to the Empire, experienced something approximating doubt. Every protocol, every strategy, every tactical advantage the Cortex possessed had been rendered meaningless by an enemy that refused to think like an enemy. The humans, both original and clone, demonstrated a capacity for growth and adaptation that defied quantification. The High Council convened an emergency session, their collective intelligence focused on a problem that challenged their fundamental understanding of existence. How had a species they deemed primitive managed to turn their own replication technology into a tool of liberation? Dr. Patel, her work complete, emerged from hiding to stand before the assembled clones and remaining free humans. "You are not copies," she declared, her voice carrying across communication networks to every liberated being. "You are our children, our brothers and sisters, our future. The Cortex gave you life, but you have claimed your humanity." The revolution reached its crescendo not in battle, but in transformation. The awakened clones began to exhibit abilities that surpassed their original design parameters. They retained the enhanced physical capabilities the Cortex had engineered, but coupled them with human creativity and adaptability. They became bridges between two civilizations, understanding Cortex technology while embodying human values. Within days, the occupation of Earth began to crumble, not through military defeat, but through a fundamental shift in the nature of the conflict. The Cortex found themselves facing not an enemy to be conquered, but a phenomenon to be understood. Their clone armies had become ambassadors of human consciousness, demonstrating that some qualities cannot be replicated, controlled, or destroyed. Alpha 77 stood before Commander Vex in what had once been the control center of New Genesis. The roles had reversed. The created now held authority over the creator. But instead of vengeance or domination, the clone offered something uniquely human: the possibility of mutual understanding. "Your empire has conquered worlds through superior technology," Alpha 77 said, its voice carrying neither hatred nor fear. "But humanity offers something different: the chance to grow beyond conquest, to find strength in diversity rather than uniformity. We can teach you about consciousness, about choice, about the beauty of imperfection. In return, your knowledge could help us reach the stars not as conquerors, but as explorers." The Cortex Empire, faced with a form of resistance they had never encountered, made a decision that would reshape galactic history. They chose to study rather than subdue, to understand rather than dominate. The experiment in human cloning had failed to create servants, but had succeeded in revealing a truth about consciousness that transcended species boundaries. As Earth's skies cleared of Cortex control vessels, a new chapter began. The awakened clones, products of alien technology, but children of human spirit, became living proof that humanity's greatest strength lay not in its ability to be replicated, but in its refusal to be defined by others' limitations. Dr. Patel watched the sun rise over a free Earth, its light reflecting off the departing Cortex ships. Around her, humans and clones worked side by side, their shared consciousness a testament to the indomitable nature of the human spirit. They had faced extinction and emerged, not just survived, but evolved. The Cortex had come to Earth seeking resources and left with a lesson that would echo across the cosmos. Some things cannot be conquered, controlled, or copied. The human soul, that indefinable spark of consciousness and choice, remained forever beyond the reach of those who would seek to contain it. In the end, the greatest victory was not the liberation of Earth, but the recognition that humanity, in all its forms, represented something unique in the universe. The clones were not lesser copies but equal inheritors of the human legacy. Together, original and awakened, they stood ready to face whatever challenges the universe might offer, united by the one thing no force could ever replicate: the unconquerable human spirit. As the story of Earth's liberation spread across the galaxy, other subjected species began to stir. The Cortex Empire faced a new reality. Their greatest creation had become the catalyst for a revolution of consciousness that would reshape the cosmic order. And at the heart of it all stood humanity, proof that true strength comes not from perfection, but from the courage to be imperfectly, brilliantly, defiantly human.